A wooden bread box sat on a yellow Formica counter in a kitchen in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in 1962. It had a sliding tambour door that rattled every time a hand opened it. My mother opened it 3 times a day. She taught every trick in this video, and not one came from a cookbook. She called them her illegal tricks, which was her way of saying the modern world would raise an eyebrow. Throw that away. Buy a new one. You shouldn't do that. She did them anyway, and her mother before her, and nobody in that house ever went hungry on $15 a week. Today, I'm going to walk you through 25 kitchen tricks that still work in any modern kitchen. Stay until the end because number 3 saved the most money every single week, and number 1 was what she called the difference between a poor woman who stayed poor and a poor woman who ate like a queen. One thing to know about her before the countdown. She was born in 1928, a child of the Great Depression and a young wife in the post-war years when rationing was fresh. Her mother fed a family of 7 through the 1930s on $11 a week in groceries. Those tricks got passed down to the yellow counter, and they work because hungry is hungry and thrifty is thrifty. Neither one has changed in a century. One thing most people miss about Depression kitchens is that they were never about eating less. They were about wasting less. Here's number 25. Number 25, the bacon grease jar next to the stove. She kept an empty Maxwell House coffee tin on the back burner with cheesecloth stretched over the top. Every rasher of bacon sent its drippings through that cloth and into the tin. 1 pound of bacon fed breakfast twice, then seasoned eggs, green beans, cornbread, and skillet potatoes for the rest of the week. Pork fat holds its flavor in the refrigerator for 90 days, according to food science research. The modern kitchen pours this down the drain and pays a plumber $150 to unclog the trap. A clean jar costs nothing, and that's how she started every single meal in 1962. Number 24, saving the bread ends. A paper bag lived in the bread drawer of that Pittsburgh kitchen. Every heel and crust went inside it. When the bag filled, she ran them through a hand-crank grater and filled a mason jar with crumbs. Those crumbs coated pork chops on Tuesday, thickened meatloaf on Wednesday, topped macaroni on Friday. Store breadcrumbs run $4 a canister today, and USDA data from 2023 found American families throw out 30% of purchased bread every year. Hers cost nothing, and the Thanksgiving stuffing was built on a year of saved heels. Number 23, the egg in the coffee pot. She cracked a whole raw egg, shell and all, into the percolator every Sunday morning without fail. In Swedish and Midwestern kitchens of the 1940s, this was how you made a full pot of coffee clear and smooth without any paper filter. The egg white grabs the bitter grounds and tannins. The shell softens the acid. What pours out an hour later tastes cleaner than any modern drip machine can produce in 2026. She learned it from a Lutheran woman 2 houses down who had learned it from her mother in Minnesota. It sounds illegal. It's not. It's chemistry, and it works every single time a pot gets made. Number 22, stretching ground beef with oatmeal. A pound of hamburger cost 59 cents in 1962, and she made it feed a family of 6. A cup of plain rolled oats went into every batch of meatloaf and meatballs she ever made. The oats soaked up the juices, held the loaf together, and turned 1 pound of beef into a 2-pound dinner on the table. Quaker printed the recipe on the oatmeal lid during the Depression, and women passed it around church basements from 1933 through the 1970s. You can't taste the oats in there. You can taste the smaller grocery bill at the end of the month. Number 21, the ham bone in the pea soup. After Easter dinner, she took the ham bone off the platter before anyone could reach for the last slice. She wrapped it in wax paper and set it in the icebox. Monday morning, it went into a pot of split peas and cold water on the stove. By supper, the kitchen smelled like a country church hall. That bone held a pound of meat nobody else would have picked off, plus a marrow that turned plain water into broth. A ham is not a meal, she used to say. A ham is 2 meals and a soup. The bone freezes for 4 months and still makes soup in July. Number 20, onion skins in the stock pot. The papery brown skins off every yellow onion went into a jar with carrot tops and celery leaves. Every Saturday, the whole thing got dumped into a stock pot with whatever bones she had. Research from America's Test Kitchen confirms that skin-on onions produce stock with measurably darker color and richer flavor. Yellow skins give you gold. Red skins give you a rosy copper. The color is free, the flavor is free, and the whole pot cost her nothing but the gas to boil it. Back then, nothing that came out of a vegetable in that kitchen got thrown away. Number 19, buttermilk from vinegar and milk. Buttermilk cost an extra 25 cents at the A&P, so she never bought it. A tablespoon of white vinegar stirred into a cup of whole milk, sitting on the counter for 10 minutes, gave her the same thick, tangy liquid every recipe called for. Pancakes, biscuits, cornbread, chocolate cake. Every one of them rose higher and tasted better with that 2-cent substitute than with a 40-cent carton from Giant Eagle. The acid reacts with baking soda the same way real buttermilk does, and her biscuits were the lightest thing that ever came out of a Pittsburgh oven. Number 18, reusing tea bags. A box of 100 Lipton bags cost 49 cents in 1963. She made it last 6 months, which meant every bag got used twice. She would brew a cup in the morning, lift the bag out with a spoon, lay it on the saucer, and drop it right back into the pot at 3 o'clock. The second brew was weaker but good, especially with a spoon of honey stirred in. Her own mother had hung used tea bags on a pantry nail during the war. 1 bag, 2 cups. That simple math cut her tea budget in half, and the tea still tasted like tea every afternoon. Number 17, the wilted lettuce bath. When the head of iceberg in the crisper had gone limp, most women in 1962 would have thrown it out. She never did. She would fill the sink with ice water and a splash of white vinegar, tear the limp leaves off the core, and drop them in for 15 minutes. The cold rehydrates the cells. The vinegar tightens everything back up. A 15-cent head of lettuce lived 3 extra days because she refused to let limp mean garbage. And here's the part she liked best. The trick works on celery, radishes, carrots, and parsley too. Number 16, overripe banana bread. A spotted, soft banana was not garbage in my mother's kitchen. It was a promise. She collected the darkest ones on top of the refrigerator, wrapped in newspaper, and when she had 3, she baked a loaf on Saturday morning. The riper the banana, the sweeter the loaf, because the starch turns to sugar as the skin blackens. She used half the sugar the recipe called for because the fruit was already sweet enough. 1 loaf fed 6 people for 3 breakfasts. The 4th morning, the crust got buttered and toasted on the cast iron skillet she had owned since 1951. Number 15, stale bread into French toast. A loaf gone dry on the counter was Sunday breakfast in her kitchen, not a mistake. She beat 3 eggs with a cup of milk, a teaspoon of vanilla, and a pinch of cinnamon from the little tin box. The stale slices soaked in that custard until they were heavy with egg. The drier the bread, the more custard it absorbed, and the better the French toast came out on the other side. Fresh bread is too soft for this. Stale bread is a sponge. Pan-fried in bacon grease from the jar on the stove, those slices came out golden and crisp every single time. Number 14, pickled watermelon rinds. She never threw away the white part of a watermelon in her life. She would peel off the green skin, cut the firm white rind into cubes, and soak them overnight in salt water. The next morning, she boiled them in a syrup of vinegar, sugar, cloves, and a cinnamon stick, and packed them into pint jars. A 25-cent watermelon from the Strip District gave us sweet slices on Sunday and 6 jars of pickles through March. The tradition goes back to Patsy Randolph, a black cook during the Depression who started the whole practice of pickling rinds that would otherwise have been wasted. Number 13, cream of mushroom as a sauce base. 4 cans of Campbell's lived in the pantry at all times, not because she was lazy, because she was clever. One can thinned with a half cup of milk, stirred into browned ground beef, made a stroganoff that fed 6 people for under $1. Dorcas Riley invented the green bean casserole in the Campbell's test kitchen in 1955. And every woman in America figured out within a year that a can of that soup was a sauce, a gravy, and a cheat code all at once. Number 12, scraping lard off the butcher paper. When a pork roast came home from Giant Eagle, she unwrapped it over the sink and used a rubber spatula to scrape every smear of fat off the paper into a small jar. That was her lard, and it was free because the roast was already paid for. A quarter cup fried the onions for Sunday dinner and greased the pie pan for the crust. Her own mother had rendered whole hog fat on the back porch every November in the 1930s. She kept the habit in miniature, one roast at a time. Pie crust made with real lard is flakier than anything from a bakery. Number 11, sour milk into pancakes. When the milk in the refrigerator had gone past its date and started to smell tangy, she didn't pour it down the drain. Sour milk, she said, is just buttermilk in a hurry. She would whisk it with flour, an egg, a spoon of sugar, and a teaspoon of baking soda from the Orange Arm and Hammer box. The batter bubbled up thicker and lighter than anything made with fresh milk. Those pancakes came off the griddle tall and golden. A half-gallon that would have gone in the trash turned into Saturday breakfast for 7 people. Number 10, the vegetable scrap bag in the freezer. A gallon freezer bag marked stock lived in the freezer door of her Frigidaire. Every onion end, carrot top, celery leaf, mushroom stem, garlic skin, and parsley stalk went inside it instead of the garbage. When the bag filled, the frozen lump got dumped into a stock pot with cold water and simmered for 3 hours. The store version costs $3 a quart. Hers cost nothing but the gas to boil. She froze the finished broth in ice cube trays and popped the cubes into soups and rice all winter long. That freezer was a bank, and every scrap was a nickel on deposit. Number 9, bread in the brown sugar jar. When brown sugar goes hard, most modern cooks throw the whole bag out. She never did. A slice of white bread went into the jar overnight with the lid screwed on tight. The sugar drew the moisture out of the bread, and by morning the hardest brick was soft enough to scoop with a spoon. One slice of bread, dried to a cracker by sunrise, rescued a pound of sugar she had already paid for. Some women kept a terracotta disc in the jar for the same purpose. She said the bread worked better, and the disc was for people with money to burn on gadgets. Number 8, saving the pickle brine. The last half-inch at the bottom of every pickle jar in her refrigerator had a second life. She poured it over hard-boiled eggs and left them in the jar for 3 days. and what came out was a pale green pickled egg her brothers loved. Or she splashed a tablespoon into potato salad and skipped the vinegar entirely. Or she marinated chicken breasts in it for an hour before frying. A jar of pickles didn't end when the pickles ran out. It ended when the brine did. Every drop paid for twice. And that's the part most people miss. Number 7, rendering chicken schmaltz. When she roasted a chicken, the pan drippings went into a small jar in the refrigerator. That golden fat, chilled to a soft yellow paste, was schmaltz, and it was the secret weapon in Jewish and Depression kitchens across the country for 100 years. She spread it on rye bread with salt and a thin slice of raw onion and called it supper on late nights when my father was working. Schmaltz has a higher smoke point than butter, which is why restaurant potatoes crisp deeper. One Sunday bird produced a pint of schmaltz that lasted 3 weeks in the icebox. Number 6, the stale cracker topping. A half-empty sleeve of soft saltines was not garbage in her pantry. It was the crispy topping on tomorrow's tuna casserole. She would crush them inside the waxed paper sleeve with the back of a spoon, mix the crumbs with a tablespoon of melted butter, and sprinkle them over the casserole before it went in the oven. The same trick worked with stale potato chips on macaroni and stale cornflakes on chicken casserole. Nothing was ever stale in her kitchen. It was just waiting for the next dish to come out of the pantry. Number 5, freezer burn rescue with milk. When a carton of vanilla ice cream grew those white crystals on top, she didn't throw it out. The whole carton went into the blender with a cup of whole milk, and what came out was a vanilla milkshake that my brothers drank standing at the counter. The same rescue worked on freezer-burned chicken, simmered slow in a broth that hid the dryness entirely. She never pitched anything frozen in 40 years of running that kitchen. The freezer was a pause button, she used to say, not a coffin. That phrase stuck with the whole family. Number 4, bread pudding from the heels. When the saved heel bag got too full for breadcrumbs, she turned it into bread pudding instead. She tore the hard crusts into a buttered baking dish, poured a custard of eggs, milk, sugar, vanilla, and a little nutmeg over the top, and baked it for 45 minutes. Raisins made it fancy. A splash of bourbon from the back of the cabinet made it Sunday. One pan fed 8 people a dessert that would have cost $3 at Isserly's Bakery in 1962, built entirely from bread already eaten once. Every rich restaurant in America now charges $9 a square for what she made from trash. Number 3, cornbread and sweet milk for breakfast. This was the trick that saved the most money every week. A wedge of leftover cornbread crumbled into a tall glass, drowned in cold whole milk with a teaspoon of sugar stirred in. That was breakfast on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for under a nickel a bowl. My grandfather ate it that way in Kentucky in 1918. My mother ate it that way in Pittsburgh in 1940. It tastes like every poor kitchen in the American South and Appalachia for 200 years. The modern cereal aisle sells the same idea for $6. One pan of cornbread fed 7 breakfasts, and the same wooden spoon stirred it every single morning. Some breakfasts aren't about hunger. They're about remembering who taught you how to eat. Number 2, reusing canning jar rings. Every August, she canned tomatoes, peaches, green beans, and pickles in the same ball and cur jars she had been using since 1948. The flat lids got replaced each year because the seal weakens with heat. The metal rings and the glass jars themselves lasted generations. Some of those jars had belonged to her mother before her. A dozen jars that cost $12 new had paid for themselves in the first summer and kept paying forever after. "A mason jar outlives 3 washing machines," she said. "4 of hers sit on my pantry shelf today, and each one has held 30 summers of tomatoes." Number 1, the cold water revival for eggs. This was what she called the difference between a poor woman who stayed poor and a poor woman who ate like a queen. When an egg's age was a question, the whole shell went into a glass of cold water, sank and lay flat, fresh, cook it. Tilt it up a week old, still good for baking. Floated to the top, throw it out, but only then. The part that surprised me most is how many good eggs most women tossed on date alone. The float test reflects interior air cell expansion, not spoilage. A dozen eggs cost 53 cents in 1962, and she never threw out a good egg in her life. She saved the equivalent of a carton a month by knowing this one trick. The package date is a guess. The water is evidence. That was her rule, and her mother's before her. That wooden bread box still sits in a kitchen in Scranton, and the tambour door still rattles when my sister opens it. My mother passed in 1994 at 84 years old, and we cleaned out the pantry over 3 weekends. The Maxwell House bacon grease tin was still on the stove. The stock bag was still in the freezer. 3 jars of watermelon pickles from the summer before sat on the shelf. A single Lipton bag dried on a saucer next to the sink. Every trick in this video, she was still running at 84. Not because she had to anymore, but because wasting food is a thing a depression child never learns to undo, and she would not have known how to stop even if we had asked her. The illegal part was never illegal. The illegal part was the modern idea that a thing is done the minute somebody calls it garbage. She knew better. Her mother knew better. And now, after 25 tricks and 1 long afternoon at the yellow Formica counter, you know better too. If one of these reminded you of your own mother or grandmother, drop her name in the comments. I'll read every single one.